Hi everyone, welcome to Lay's Lit Lessons. I know I've been saying that I would do a YouTube channel for a while now, so it's pretty excited that I'm getting this all started. I guess that I would like to focus today on nominalisation. So welcome to the channel. I hope that you follow and subscribe. With this, I guess I'll be focusing on writing and how to improve, as well as that, we may focus on some text analysis, but I think at this point it's just the type of writing. So today we're looking at nominalisation. This is something that I've seen over the years really improve students' writing. It certainly can improve students within Year 12, but it is wonderful throughout all different year groups, as well as that I've seen students just really lift their level of writing within the space of a year. So it really does work, as well as that. It's something really important, particularly with the new HSC. Obviously the focus is on analytical essays, but as well as that with Module C now, with reflections as well. So I guess those are the two main text types that you'll be using with it. Maybe also persuasive, certainly that would come into it as well. So certainly those of you who are looking at this to help with NAPLAN, it certainly can help you with that as well, because that's actually how some of the marks are allocated. So quickly then, a quick refresher, what is a verb, what is a noun? I want you guys to actually take the time to answer these questions. There are questions throughout. Please pause the video as opposed to just getting to the answer. The whole idea of this is that you guys are actually actively learning as opposed to just taking it all in, because it doesn't happen that way. You need to actually consciously give this a proper go. So have a think of what that is. I'm about to click over to the next slide. So pause this video if you don't want to know the answer just yet. Okay, so a verb describes an action, state, or occurrence. It forms the main part of a sentence. Now with that, every sentence has to have a verb. I think I need to make that clear before we go on, just because we're going to be looking at the processes of nominalisation, which is playing with your verbs. As well as that, it's a state or occurrence. So the word is a verb. And I know that can be quite hard to get your head around, particularly because too often people just focus on the fact that it's an action. And if you are saying is, you're not necessarily doing anything, but it is a state or occurrence. A noun then is a person, place, or thing. Okay, so I hope that you guys have that understood so far. I want you guys to have a read of the following paragraphs. These are paragraphs where there's pretty much the same information on one of the texts that my Year 11s are currently studying for dystopias. So please pause this so you can have a proper read of it, and I'm about to click over to the next slide. So thinking about those two paragraphs, I want you to have a think. What are the main differences between the two paragraphs, and which one would be more highly valued in education? Okay, so just to help you out, you might want to skip back to that slide so you can have a look at the two different paragraphs in relation to this question. So here are the answers. The first one is longer. Well, I guess these are the answers that most commonly come up in class discussions. So the first one is much longer. The second one has more sophisticated language. The second one says the same thing, but is more to the point. And the second one is more valued in an academic setting. Now, these are generally the answers that I get within the class and within the classroom. Certainly there's more than that, but these are the ones on first observation. Now, as I mentioned, these actually have the same information, but they're just written in very different ways. And what you will notice is that you can actually condense more into some of those sentences for them to make sense. So for example, if we look at the final sentence, through Vonnegut's use of repetition in nobody was smarter than anyone else, no one was better looking than anyone else, the emphasis on equality is explored. Certainly you can actually expand that out, and you can, then add another clause, like highlighting whatever it is to the audience, that sort of thing. So I guess you've got to think about, it's about condensing your language. So nominalisation. So nominalisation is the process of changing a verb into a noun. And within that, you're making your writing sound more sophisticated, and you're actually saying more with fewer words. So for example, employ becomes employment. Okay, so that's quite straightforward at this point in time. If you want to have a go, think about, well, actually, I'll give it a go for you. If you use the word employ or employed in a sentence, you would have something along the lines of, I will employ you, which is, a fine sentence on its own, but you can say so much more with the word employment. So as opposed to saying, I will employ you on Monday, your employment starting Monday will, and then you can add to it, will include how to use a cash register. I don't know, whatever it is in that sort of employment that you're looking at. But do you see there how you can actually say a lot more by changing a verb into a noun? Now, also just a reminder that to change, you need a verb for a sentence. So you cannot nominalize everything you see. Okay, so don't get too crazy with it, because what you'll find is that you will have sentences that do not make sense. If your sentence does not have a verb, it is not a sentence. Okay, so normalization in sentences. So I basically have been focused very much on the advanced and extension course that I'm currently working on with Year 11. And one of the things that we focused on for advanced is reading to write with a focus on nature and landscapes. So I guess here are some examples that came out through reflections within the task. They're not, they're not sentences used word for word. I've looked at some and perhaps captured the style as opposed to using the sentences verbatim. So here's an example of one. As I wrote my imaginative response, I tried to capture the idea of romanticism through natural imagery. Okay, and then I changed that to, through the writing process of my imaginative response, the capturing of romanticism through natural imagery, let me explore the significance to the landscape. Okay, so with that, notice I've changed wrote to writing process. Okay, well, as I wrote to writing process, because that there makes it a noun. And within that, then, you're actually saying more things about it, so the significance of the landscape. Okay, well, why is this important? It's important for building abstract nouns and specialist terms as opposed to everyday concrete language. So rather than, for instance, I guess, if I want to go back to the old area study, which was belonging, I belong to a place, that's quite concrete, whereas you get a sense of belonging from your sense of family, if that makes sense, okay? And with that encompasses things like feelings. It's not just about the fact that you belong. It creates density in writing. So when we normalize words, other words can be used to describe the process. So again, if I were to go back to, I belong, if you change that to my sense of belonging, you can therefore say something about belonging now, as opposed to just telling me that you belong. So how to normalize sentences. Again, please make sure you're pausing this as we go. So step 1, find the verb. So here's my sentence, and I want you guys to write this down and have a go at it. So perspectives of equality have evolved throughout the years based on changing context, which has led to changing values. Please pause this now so I can move on. Okay, so the verb there is evolved. Okay, so, sometimes it's easier to find the verb than other times. Sometimes, at first, I think you're going to actually find this a bit lengthy, but it will get easier over time. So then step 2 is change the verb into a noun. Again, pause it now because I really want you to have a proper go of this. So evolved becomes evolution. Okay, so that's quite straightforward. Quite often with your nouns, so you're looking for words with shin, ism, ation, like that sort of thing towards the end. Quite often they'll become longer, although having said that, they might not. Okay, and the word might not actually change itself as well. Okay, step 3 then is rewrite the sentence so it makes sense with the new noun. Okay, again, please pause this now so I can move on. Okay, so the sentence, of course, is perspectives of equality have evolved throughout the years based on changing contexts. And that becomes the evolution of perspectives of equality is based on changing contexts. Now, as you can see there, I could actually add a lot more to that sentence. It's quite a simple way of normalizing. Remember that you're normalizing to try and condense your language. Don't normalize just for the sake of it. Normalize so you can add something onto it. Keep in mind, though, that you may not be able to use the same word. Okay, so there's some words like is and was. Obviously, you can't use those. There isn't a noun for that. As well as that, a lot of them might be colloquialism. So you might have the word let, which you might not then want to make that into a noun. Some words will stay the same. So not all words will necessarily change. Okay, so normalization in sentences. Normalize the following sentences. You will notice that you will only be able to create the start of sentences once they have been normalized. Okay, so we've got Huxley's Brave New World won a prize, and Huxley critiques the scientific advancement of his time. Please pause it now. Huxley's prize-winning novel, Brave New World, and you see you can end it there, so you can continue the sentence there. And then Huxley's criticism of scientific advancement within his time. Again, there's a lot more that you can say there. Have a go at normalizing the following words. So you've got explores, symbolize, represents, and then have a go at using them in a sentence. Now, if you want the answer, okay, so the answers for those are exploration, symbolism, and representation. So have a go at putting those in a sentence if you haven't already figured those out. Just remember that part of it is about the process of using normalized words to make your language sound more sophisticated. So there's certain words that eventually you'll start using more, hopefully. And then I guess now it's up to you guys. So have a go. Have a look at your draft and try to normalize some parts which need to be condensed. And the other thing is be conscious of this when you're writing. So, think about those normalized words. Think about how you can normalize as you go so that's not harder when you go back and try to restructure your whole sentence at the end. Okay, well, thank you so much for following along in this lesson. I hope you enjoyed it and that you got a lot out of it. Please feel free to email me if you are stuck with any of that, or put a comment below. You can please make sure you subscribe as well. Thank you so much. See you next time. How do I close this?